Okay, so I wanted to just before I begin talking about the larynx, I just wanted to show you what we were talking about today. Um, the larynx, okay, before I begin, let's just show you where it's situated here. So you have the hyoid bone, it's in close relations with the hyoid bone. That's the hyoid bone. If you're wondering what this in red is, that's the pharynx, okay? And so the hyoid bone is right here. And if you're wondering what this space is here, the red one is the food pipe. And so that's the windpipe, that's the trachea. The larynx is the way into the air passage. So I'm going to isolate the larynx. That's the larynx. Okay. And so you have mucosal folds in it. But what we're going to be focusing on today is the larynx structure, mainly the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, the epiglottis, the arytenoid, the cuneiform, cuneiform, and the corniculate cartilages. So I'll just show you. Here, you have the epiglottis. It is attached to the anterior internal part of the thyroid cartilage. That is the thyroid cartilage right here. This fold right here is called the thyroid membrane, which is a ligament that connects the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone that was present before we isolated it. Then we have this structure right here. It is called the cricoid cartilage. And so these three make up the single cartilages of the larynx, the cricoid cartilage, thyroid cartilage, and the epiglottis. And then finally, we're going to talk about also the aryepiglottic cartilages here, arytenoid cartilages. The arytenoid cartilages are found to be on the shoulders of the cricoid cartilage right here. The I hope I can just, yeah, there. If you see all of this right here, that's the superior horns and the inferior horns of the thyroid cartilage. That's the arytenoid cartilage right here, found on the shoulders of the cricoid cartilage. The cricoid cartilage sits on the first ring of the trachea that is not shown here. This is the cricotracheal ligament that connects the cricoid cartilage to the first ring of the trachea. This is here. This is the, one second, the cricothyroid ligament, and it has a median cricothyroid ligament on the anterior side of it that connects the cricoid cartilage to the thyroid cartilage. What I'm doing here is just showing you an image of it and how things are situated before we talk about it in images so that you guys understand. And so this epiglottis here would close the inlet, that's the laryngeal inlet, to prevent food from getting into the larynx. Okay, so just keep this image in your brain once we get to talk about the cartilages and how they look like. Maybe I can just isolate this for you here just to see. I don't know if I can isolate it, but maybe from here. Okay, so I would isolate this one. That's the from the lateral aspect. This is how the thyroid cartilage it looks like. The cricoid cartilage, I would isolate this. This is how it looks like. It's like basically a ring structure. Okay. Then I would maybe want to isolate. I don't know if I can do that. The epiglottis, isolate. It looks like that. Okay. You would find here anteriorly the thyroid cartilage, it attaches to it. Yeah, so this is the larynx, and we were going to dive into it. This one right here is the membrane that connects the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone, called the thyroid membrane. This is part of the extrinsic ligaments of the pharynx, together with the cricothyroid ligament is also an extrinsic ligament, and these are the two extrinsic ligaments found in the larynx. There are also intrinsic ligaments, and I'll show you exactly those when we talk about it. So keep this in your brain once we discuss further, and I hope this video can help you get a full image of it. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next segment of the video. I wanted to also include the notes of larynx here for you, just for your view, maybe a just quick intense kind of notes for you. Larynx right here. Maybe you can just pause the video for yourself. I'll just scroll through it and let you observe or pause the video if you need at any point. Right here, we've discussed all of those right here. They're here for you and your view. Yeah, Epiglottis, Thyroid Cartilage, Cricoid Cartilage, Arytenoid Cartilage, Corniculate, Cuneiform. Okay, membranes of the larynx. These are just the ligaments, the extrinsic and the intrinsic together. Okay. Then you have the muscles. So the actions of them: stretch vocal cords, relax them, abducts, adducts, and then the cavity, which is the laryngeal cavity made up of the vestibule, infraglottic, the ventricle, or like the middle part, the orifice that is closed by the epiglottis, have laryngeal, the arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage, the nerve supply. Okay, everybody. Finally, we're at this part. I was waiting for us to reach here because it's always interesting to talk about the larynx. I know you be studying, you might find it hard to understand how things are related to each other here. And talking about like the vocal cords and the true cords and the false cords and stuff. So I've in the back when I study it, I used to make sure that I go through it piece by piece and dissect it until I got the full image. Before I start talking about the larynx, I want you guys to know that we're at this part here in the syllabus on the day 16th-17th. Veins of the head and neck, we've covered them except for the external jugular vein. Maybe I'll do it in the next one. But I want to focus my intentions today on the larynx, talking about the laryngeal cartilages, the ligaments, muscles, cavity, and the glottis. And so I'll try my best to make sure that I clearly say things here because it's very important to understand the larynx. Okay, so the larynx. So what is larynx? It's basically the entrance towards the trachea, where the air main passage takes place towards the lungs. Okay, so why the larynx is there is because it needs to keep that opening for the air. So to maintain a structure above the larynx to prevent the soft tissues from collapsing. So that's why the larynx is there, to give that opening for a continuous passage of the air. Okay, so it is found anterior to the lower part of the pharynx. Okay, it ends with the trachea, of course. So the trachea is basically a couple of C-ringed cartilages that are lined one above each other to also help maintain a hollow tube for the passage of air to our lungs. Of course, the larynx is the hollow musculature structure that houses the lower respiratory tract. It is always open to allow for the continuous supply to the trachea with air. It is anterior to the pharynx, which extends to the esophagus. So remember, the pharynx extends to the esophagus, the larynx extends to the trachea. The larynx situated between C4 and C6 cervical vertebrae levels. The laryngeal opening is continuous with the pharynx, and so the epiglottis closes the opening of the trachea, and also the larynx closes itself during swallowing. Okay, so why this happens is because you don't want food getting into the larynx and getting into the windpipe. So for this, the epiglottis, which is part of the larynx, closes that laryngeal inlet, and so food is only allowed to pass through the esophagus, not to the trachea. Okay. It also has sound functions. This is when we talk about the Rima glottis, where here we're talking about basically the true vocal cords of the larynx that help give different pitches of sound as we speak. The structure, the cartilages connect with muscles and ligaments. Okay, so Now, when we dive into the cartilages first, we're going to then dive into the pairs and the paired and the unpaired cartilages. Then we're going to see how they're connected by ligaments. And then we're going to talk about the muscles that help cause the motion of the larynx in relation with swallowing and stuff like that. So first, the cartilages of the larynx. The larynx cartilages are connected to the hyoid bone with ligaments and also to the trachea. Okay, so the larynx has three single cartilages: the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and the epiglottis. So the thyroid cartilage is basically, if you touch right here, you see that there is like a V-shaped cartilage kind of thing. This is called the cricoid cartilage, and just below it, you'd find a large circular structure. This is called the cricoid cartilage, and then the epiglottis is found more on the inside in relations with the thyroid cartilage that helps in this blocking situation. Okay, so the thyroid cartilage is made up of two plates. You see that these are the plates 1 and 2, and so they're situated in a way connected anteriorly, giving the Adam's apple. So the Adam's apple is mainly formed by the thyroid cartilage. They are not connected posteriorly, so there's a space posteriorly. The movement of this bone is exactly like the helmet of a biker, where it moves up. The cartilage has a protrusion anteriorly, and in males it is very sharp, called the Adam's apple. So the thyroid cartilage, imagine there's a helmet of a biker, and then how that opening of the helmet on the anterior side to allow for the view of your eye, that's how the thyroid cartilage moves. The cricoid cartilage is just a ring cartilage that is below the thyroid cartilage. And the epiglottis is found attached to the inner anterior aspect of the thyroid cartilage. It helps to close the trachea during the swallowing process. It will then open again after swallowing is over. So what we were talking about is basically this. So the thyroid cartilage is basically this part right here. Okay, here. And so that's the left plate we're looking at. There's also a right plate that is not appearing in this image. So they're basically like that. Okay, left plate and right plate. And so the most anterior superior part of it is the Adam's apple, which is here. That's what forms the Adam's apple. Okay, and so how it looks on the inside is we're cutting this plate off. And so we're looking at it right now in this image. So you have the right plate right now, left plate taken off. And so you see that it's a hollow space where the plates are connected anteriorly, and posteriorly they're not connected. And you can see the epiglottis more clearly. You can see it here as well, but here you can see it more clearly. That's the epiglottis. So when the epiglottis is functional and allows for the closing, it just goes back like that towards the posterior and closing the like the laryngeal inlet. So so this part right here would go back, and so that movement would close the laryngeal inlet. Okay, so I'll probably maybe show you a little bit later about the epiglottis, but maybe we can see better images. Now we're going to talk about the paired cartilages. So before we move on, just so far we've talked about, that's the cricoid cartilage here, cricoid cartilage, thyroid cartilage, and the epiglottis right here. Okay. And so now we're going to talk about the paired cartilages. I had to just move to a quieter space because my family was just around. Okay, so so far we've talked about the thyroid cartilage, the cricoid cartilage, and so also the epiglottis. And these are the non-paired cartilages, single cartilages of the larynx. Okay. The larynx also has paired cartilages, and so they're smaller pieces that are found in close relations with the single ones. Okay. Just remember that the thyroid cartilage is attached to the cricoid cartilage. That's the cricoid, attached to it on the lateral aspects. And so the epiglottis as well is attached to the anterior inner surface of the thyroid. Okay. All right. The larynx has three paired cartilages. They're called the arytenoid cartilages, corniculate, and the cuneiforms. Okay, the arytenoid cartilages are basically these huge star-shaped bones that are found attached to the cricoid cartilage. They're found on the posterior shoulders of the cricoid cartilages. They are made of two processes: the anterior vocal processes, these are the ones anteriorly, and the lateral muscular processes here, okay, and the apex, which is found above the base. That's the apex, okay? So muscular, vocal, apex, okay? The vocal process is found to attach the vocal ligaments, okay, and the lateral processes are found to attach the muscles of the larynx. All right, so that's how it's situated. Now the corniculate, they are found on top, on the tip of the apex of the arytenoid cartilages. In this image, you can see them here. They're very tiny. These are the corniculate, okay? And then the cuneiform cartilages are found in the membrane. So they're just found above it, and then they're found in the membranes. I don't know if you can see, just give me a second. On this image right here, maybe you can see a little bit of a demonstration. Here, cuneiform. So corniculate is found just stuck on top of the apex of the arytenoid, and the cuneiforms are found somewhere above in the membrane behind. Okay. So that's for the cartilages. Very pretty easy. So you just need to understand how they're situated. I would advise to look at more images, look at how they move on an animation on Google or something. And so you will get the idea. It's pretty straightforward, and it's very nice to study those things. Just before I move on, well, so I'll discuss the membranes later, like they're just part of the ligament. So right now we've just gone through the cartilages that make up the larynx. And so basically now we're just going to dive into how they're connected and motions and stuff like that. Okay, the extrinsic ligaments of the larynx, the ligaments that are found on the external part of it. Here we have the thyroid membrane, thyrohyoid membrane. From its name, it says thyrohyoid. That's the hyoid bone, and that's the thyroid cartilage. So the thyrohyoid membrane is basically the one that is attached to the superior border of the hyoid bone and to the inferior border of the superior border of the thyroid cartilage and the inferior border of the hyoid bone. Okay, so here it says between hyoid bone and hyoid cartilage. Thyroid cartilage, okay, between hyoid bone and thyroid cartilage, has an opening for the passage of the laryngeal nerve and blood vessels. You see this opening right here, it's an aperture for internal branches of superior laryngeal nerves and the associated artery here. So these are arteries that vascularize or innervate the larynx. So the superior laryngeal nerve that splits into the external and the internal, as you remember from our video of the vagus nerve, as far as I remember. Okay, these innervate and vascularize the inner aspects of the larynx. It also has median thyrohyoid ligament, okay, between the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage in the anterior part. So the median is right here. Sorry, that was my sister. The median is right here. And so it basically is the part where the two sides, the right and the left of the thyrohyoid membrane connects. And so that forms the median thyrohyoid ligament, okay, right here, just from the Adam's apple to the median part, or the anterior median part of the hyoid bone, okay. So there's also the plus the lateral thyrohyoid ligament in the posterior lateral end between the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage. This is just us saying that the what is it called? The thyroid membrane has parts. So a very good part of it is the median thyroid ligament and the lateral thyroid ligament, and they're just telling us where it is situated. And so lateral thyroid ligament is found between just the this part of the thyroid cartilage and the that part of the hyoid bone. And so this is called the lateral thyroid ligament. Okay, that's the thyroid membrane. So then we're going to talk about the cricotracheal ligament. The cricotracheal ligament is basically the ligament between the cricoid cartilage and the first string of the trachea. Okay, and so it's very straightforward. These are the extrinsic, so they're just on the external aspect connecting the larynx with the structures that surround it externally. So superiorly to the hyoid bone and inferiorly to the trachea. To the hyoid bone, we have the thyroid membrane, and it's made up of the median and the lateral. And inferiorly, it is the cricotracheal ligament that is just connecting the cricoid cartilage to the first ring of the trachea. Okay, now we finished the extrinsic. Now we're going to talk about ligaments that are found on the inside, the intrinsic ligaments. Okay, so the intrinsic ligaments, if I warn you right here, it may be confusing to study those, especially the quadrate membrane. But once you get it, it's easy. The main tip to always understand structures, you have to look at pictures and so understand how they're situated. So intrinsic ligaments, they're basically ligaments that are found on the inside of the larynx and so help connect structures together and allow them to function in a stable manner. So the quadrate ligament, quadrate membrane is the first intrinsic ligament we're going to talk about for the larynx. It's a square membrane that has 4 borders. Okay, and I will show you right now what I'm talking about. So let's see. Yeah, there we go. I think we can talk about it here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so the quadrate membrane. So anteriorly, it has 4 borders, of course. The anterior border attached to the side of the epiglottis, posterior border attached to the arytenoid cartilage, epiglottic ligament, arytenoid cartilage, and the epiglottis. Okay, and I'll show you what these things mean. Vestibular ligament or false vocal cord between the arytenoid cartilage and the inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage. So you see here, that's the quadrate ligament. That's the first intrinsic ligament that we are going to talk about. I will just give you an idea of what I am focusing on here. We're just focusing on this square image right here. The quadrate ligament is basically a ligament that is made up of 4 borders. Okay, so it's just a membrane made up of 4 borders. Just to give you an idea, that's the posterior part of the larynx. Okay, because what I can see is the horn, the posterior horn of the thyroid cartilage. That's the hyoid bone. So here I'm looking at the lateral thyroid ligament of the membrane that we talked about, the first one, remember? So here, thyroid membrane, the lateral thyroid ligament. That's what I see right here. There, lateral thyroid ligament of the thyroid membrane. Okay, just to give you a situation, that's the opening we talked about. Then if we go on the anterior side, we see the Adam's apple. Okay, and then we just remove the right lateral plate of the thyroid cartilage to just look at the inside structures and see the quadrate membrane. Okay, so anteriorly, so let's say okay, so let's just get the descriptions out. So here, so anteriorly attached to the side of the epiglottis, there, attached to the side of the epiglottis right here, anteriorly. Okay, then we have posteriorly attached to the arytenoid cartilage. Anterior, posterior, attached to the arytenoid cartilage, attached to the epiglottis. Then we have Epiglottic ligament, arytenoid cartilage, and the epiglottis, between the arytenoid cartilage and the epiglottis. Epiglottic ligament, that's the one between the arytenoid cartilage and the epiglottis. Epiglottic ligament, that's the fold, okay? And then we have something called the false vocal cord between the arytenoid cartilage and the posterior aspect of the thyroid cartilage, right here. Vestibular ligament or false vocal cord between the arytenoid cartilage and the inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage. Okay, so that's the quadrate membrane. And so we have two of those. We're just seeing the lateral one because it's closely related to the lateral plate of the thyroid cartilage. And we have a right quadrate membrane as well. And so they're each extending towards an arytenoid cartilage. We have two arytenoid cartilages, and so we see here only one, and so we have two, okay, quadrate membranes. All right. So that's for the first membrane. I don't know if we can see it here on this. Yes. So just give me a second. I have to just charge my laptop. Just gonna pause here. Back. So we discussed the quadrate membrane. So on this image right here, we see we are looking at the anterolateral side of the larynx. So this is Adam's apple right here. The lateral left plate of the thyroid cartilage is removed, which should be covering this part. Okay, what we're looking at right now is the epiglottis, the hyoid bone right here. And so airway comes in from this side. And so when the epiglottis functions, you will see that the epiglottis closes that laryngeal aspects moving posteriorly. Okay, the laryngeal inlet is closed when the epiglottis moves posteriorly. And so what we just discussed is the quadrate membrane right here. We have two of them. And so they have cut a part out of it right here. Okay, cut a part out of it. It's like this shape right here, like a trapezoid. They cut it out. And so we can see through it, just behind this blue line, another one. You see that there's one line and then there's another one right here. And so those are basically aligned like that. Okay, if you're looking, now we're looking at the image in this way. So they're aligned like that. So you can see that the quadrate membrane on the left, and then there's a quadrate membrane on the right inside the screen. Okay. So here we have the part of the membrane that is attached to the epiglottis. Then we have the part that is attached to the arytenoid cartilage. Then we have the part that is the false vocal cord that is between the arytenoid cartilage and the thyroid inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage. And then finally, we have the epiglottic fold between the arytenoid cartilage and the epiglottis. Okay, that's for the quadrate membrane. If you don't really get it yet, you just look at more images and you will understand how the quadrate membrane looks like. But this image can do its job. Yeah, these two are very, very useful. Okay. So that was the first intrinsic membrane, okay, of the larynx and its parts. It's just summarized for you right here. Let me just write here between. Okay, and then we have the cricothyroid ligament. The cricothyroid ligament is very important. So from its name, we know that the cricothyroid ligament is found between the cricoid cartilage, okay, here, ligament attaching the thyroid cartilage with the cricoid cartilage. Okay, so now single ligament that is rounded, unlike the quadrate, which has left and right, has anterior part called the median cricothyroid ligament, and has a lateral cricothyroid ligament as well on both sides. The upper part of the lateral cricothyroid ligaments are called the true vocal cords, which connect together the inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage with the vocal process of the arytenoid cartilages. Okay, so the cricothyroid ligament is basically this one right here. That's the cricoid cartilage. It extends from the superior border of the cricoid cartilage to the anterior inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage and the vocal processes of the arytenoid cartilages. And so this one right here, this edge of this ligament or like membrane, this edge are called the true vocal cords or Rima glottis. Okay, and these are the ones that are in charge of creating the strong pitch or the low pitch of the voice. And this happens, why, is because the arytenoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage move, and as they move in relation to each other, they either contract or relax this ligament, like extend it or relax it. So this causes tension. So this tension is the one that helps to create the difference in pitch. And so you can see here, it's labeled the left vocal cord right here. And so if there's a left vocal cord attached to the left arytenoid cartilage, you have also the right vocal cord attached to the right arytenoid cartilage, and both of those meet and the anterior internal part of the thyroid cartilage. Okay, so again, so the cricothyroid ligament is basically found on the circular aspect inferiorly. So the inferior part of it is found on the circular aspect of the superior part of the cricoid cartilage, and so when it extends upwards, it reaches the true vocal cords that are connecting the arytenoid cartilages with the anterior inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage. And so when the thyroid moves in relation to the arytenoid cartilage, it extends or relaxes the true vocal cords, and so that causes the voice change. And so that's why it's really important to know that the inferior parts of the quadrate membranes, mainly the vestibular ligaments, are the false vocal cords, and the superior part of the cricothyroid ligaments are the true vocal cords, Rima glottis. Okay, there we go. Now we are going to talk about the laryngeal inlet. The laryngeal inlet is basically this circular part where the air enters the larynx. And so the laryngeal inlet that has borders anteriorly, the laryngeal inlet is covered with the epiglottis if the epiglottis is covering it. Laterally, surrounded by left and right quadrate membranes, as we remember, left, right quadrate membranes. Okay. Posteriorly, the mucous membrane and the arytenoids are found posteriorly right here. Okay, and then the epiglottis closes the laryngeal inlet during swallowing so that food does not enter the larynx. The laryngeal cavity, okay, basically all the hollow passage that the air takes from the laryngeal inlet until it reaches the trachea is called the laryngeal cavity. And so it's made up of 3 parts, as far as I remember. And so these 3 parts have different compositions. The vestibule extending from the inlet to the vestibular fold. So what are the vestibular folds? The inlet to the vestibular folds, the false vocal cords. They are the inferior aspects of the quadrate membrane. So that's this part, all of this part is called the vestibule. And that part is the first part of the laryngeal cavity. Then we have the middle part extending between the vestibular folds and the superiorly and the true vocal cords which are the superior border of the lateral cricothyroid ligament. Okay, so what are they saying exactly is that the middle one is extending from the false vocal cords to the true vocal cords. That's the middle part, extending between the vestibular folds, false vocal cords, and the true vocal cords. Here, middle part. And then finally, we have the infraglottic area between the true vocal cord to the first string of the trachea. The infraglottic, why glottic, is it comes from Rima glottis, which is the other name for the space created between the true vocal cords, that small space or hole creating between the true vocal cords, left and right, that's the Rima glottis. And so that's the limit or the start of the infraglottic area. So infraglottic, below the glottic area, to the first cartilage, first ring of the trachea. So from here, so that's the false vocal cord. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the true vocal cords from here to the first tracheal cartilage. That's the infraglottic area. Above the true vocal cords and below the false vocal cords, that's the middle part. And then above the false vocal cord to the laryngeal inlet, that's the vestibular part or the vestibule. Okay, so I hope this was clear. The laryngeal inlet is the vestibule, middle part, and infraglottic area. Okay. Just more information about the laryngeal cavity. The space between the two vestibular folds of the quadrate membrane is called the Rima vestibuli, right? And the space between the two vocal cords is called the Rima glottis, okay? Which is the narrow space in larynx. And so if anything passes here that cannot pass, choking happens. The piriform fossa, okay, this is a new space that I'm mentioning here, is a space between the aryepiglottic ligament and the inner aspect of the thyroid cartilage on each side. So the aryepiglottic ligaments, so right here, if we are talking about aryepiglottic ligaments, let me see if I can, yeah. So here you have the aryepiglottic ligament, and then you have lateral to it the thyroid cartilage, and that space, very narrow space on both sides, that is lateral to the laryngeal cavity between those two structures, is actually called the piriform fossa. Okay, and you start coughing to get it out of your windpipe because things get into that piriform fossa, and when things get in there, the coughing process happens. Okay, you can go ahead and look at more pictures related to those spaces, but it's very important to understand the laryngeal cavity and the spaces that are present and their names. And so you can also you are also able to describe between what and what those spaces or names are. Okay. Finally, we are going to talk about the muscles of the larynx. And so this is just me typing stuff. But muscles of the larynx and their functions. So the muscles of the larynx, extrinsic and intrinsic muscles of the larynx. The extrinsic, the first one is the thyroid muscle from the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone, of course, and the sternothyroid muscle from the sternum to the thyroid cartilage. Okay. The intrinsic muscle of the larynx are the cricothyroid muscle, the thyroarytenoid muscle, the lateral cricoarytenoid muscle, the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle, the oblique arytenoid muscle, and the transverse arytenoid muscle. And so you would need to understand how these muscles are situated and how their functions are and how they're able to move the structures. They're very they're summarized in this image right here, but it would always be nice for you guys to go check out animation movies of how those muscles cause motions for the cartilages around each other, for you to understand things like how the Rima glottis is narrowed or widened for more pitches, and that involves the movement of the thyroid cartilage in relation to the arytenoid cartilage by the muscles, so that pitches of the voice change. But yeah, I think that's the only part I wouldn't be going through today, just for the sake of the shortness of the video. But like, just know exactly these muscles, extrinsic, intrinsic muscles of the larynx, and some of them I've mentioned the functions here in the notes. You can go ahead and dive into it. I think there's also like a summary here of the blood supply, nerve supply, and the lymphatic ranges of the larynx. But I hope you found this video useful. Um, it can be really hard to get your brain around those things, but once you get it, it's easy. And so when he says, describe for me the larynx, you have a lot of things to say about it. And you can never end talking about it, because it's a very complex structure that is found to sit very well together, and helps create the voice changes and allows for the widening of the opening of the trachea, so that air, so it gives a continuous passage for the air into your lungs. Thank you guys for joining on this video.